Hey folks, welcome back to the Stitch Up. This is part 2 of episode 3, my interview with Hugo Ferrand about Batman vs Superman, and also some more philosophical and spiritual musings about what goes on behind the scenes in Hollywood and who may be pulling a few strings. Now, I'll just preface as well, these are just thoughts. It's just a conversation that me and Hugo had. Hugo has these opinions. I thought they were very, very interesting. You make up your own mind, or if you think he's completely crazy, then turn it off. It doesn't matter. We're just having a conversation. It's not, meant to change the world. Cinephiles who like to geek out and talk about the what ifs. Just enjoy the episode. It is a little bit longer than normal, just under half an hour, but it's well worth a watch. Hugo is a very insightful, very intelligent man, and he's really got some interesting points to make about, what could be just written off as a silly comic book movie, and it is, but I think there's something more going on there too. So here we go, back to Trentham. Welcome back. Are you enjoying that drink? Well, you're about to spit it out.
Okay, here it is. So I've been puzzling over Zack Snyder ever since his first movies dropped, the movies that I was aware of dropped. 300, I thought, spectacular. It's a spectacular achievement visually, but directorially completely incompetent, and on a human level, puzzling and a little disturbing. And that has been, as far as I'm concerned, my reaction pretty much all of Zack Snyder's work. I find myself puzzled and disturbed by the amorality in these movies. And I think you touched on it perfectly when you said that, how can people look up to these so-called superheroes?
In these iterations.
These iterations, in his versions of them. No one can, except someone with the psychology of Zack Snyder, and someone with the particular combination of backgrounds that he has. Philosophical and moral grounding that is present and prevalent in the US, particularly affects people of an elite. Okay. Yeah, it's a combination of two things. How did the philosophy of Christianity become so twisted in the US through the evangelical lens to condone selfishness and materialism of the basic definition of money acquisition and power acquisition?
Yeah, so how a peaceful, all-loving philosophy turned into a cash cow.
And how did it happen that we reached kind of the latter 2/3 or half of the 20th century, and all of a sudden evangelical Christians are getting involved with politics and trying to change the political landscape of the USA, culminating in things like the election of George W. Bush, let's say, who's able to say things like that, his invasion of Iraq is a message from God, it's an instruction from God.
Yeah.
These kind of activities. How did this happen? What is the philosophy that was able to supersede the love and acceptance and the fundamental kind of Franciscan or St. Francis of Assisi lack of material wealth values that Christianity purports to have? There is a completely contrary philosophy that has infected US society and been taken on board by numerous groups, including many evangelical Christians, but also people from Silicon Valley and people high up in political realms in the US. Ayn Rand is their spiritual leader.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Her novels, her philosophy of objectivism becomes the twin philosophy alongside a kind of watered down, selfish version a compromised version of Christianity to create a self-righteous, greedy, avaricious version of morality, which fundamentally tries to destroy any concept of altruism. Man's fundamental mission, as Ayn Rand would say, man's fundamental mission is the fulfillment of his own goals. Altruism gets in the way of that. Man must be free to pursue his own goals. He must not tolerate anybody's interference with his pursuit of those goals of happiness and self-fulfillment. He must not attempt to interfere with anyone else's pursuit of his own goals.
Okay.
That's basically the philosophy of objectivism.
Right.
Snyder, I'm convinced, is an objectivist, is a Randian.
Right. Okay. And this based on all of his films, or just Superman versus Batman?
Based on pretty much all of his films in a loose way. The other thing that I'm convinced of is that, like many people who follow this peculiar combination of totally contradictory, in my opinion, philosophies,
Yeah.
they are prevalent in the political sphere. They're prevalent on what would be known loosely as the right wing. Firmly placed is a very famous comics author, Frank Miller. Anyone who doesn't know, Frank Miller wrote The Dark Knight Returns. But as happened when 9/11 dropped, is that appropriate? When 9/11, it's not an album, Hugo. It's not the latest mixtape.
Have you heard 9/11? It's wicked.
Yeah, man. I'm about to drop a mixtape. It's so fire. Oh, man. 9/11. Get ready for 9/11. Nah, sorry, everybody. When 9/11 occurred, the tragic events of 7/11.
So it's put a bit of brevity to the thing. That's good. Sorry, when 9/11 happened, I've never heard this. I don't know what he said. Sorry, he's just... It's not an album, Hugo.
It's not like a sophomore mixtape from your favourite rapper.
Oh, okay.
Although it would be fire.
That would be.
Frank Miller came out and made very, very strong statements about the need that this was fundamentally a race war, a religion war, and that the US needed to act quickly in the Trumpian fashion to, destroy all threats and take, brook no hesitation.
A lot of people would say that what America has done abroad has led to the doubts and even the hatred of some of its own citizens.
Okay, then let's finally talk about the enemy. For some reason, nobody seems to be talking about who we're up against, and the 6th century barbarism they actually represent. These people saw people's heads off. They enslave women. They genetically mutilate their daughters. They do not behave by any cultural norms that are sensible to us. I'm speaking into a microphone that never could have been the product of their culture. And I'm living in a city where 3,000 of my neighbors were killed by thieves of airplanes they never could have built.
So he kind of, at that point, kind of outed himself as very much an extremist of this kind of activity, of this kind of politics. But he's always had that philosophy. Frank Miller's always had that philosophy.
Oh, you can tell it from his books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look at 300. 300 is this book which elevates and deifies these Greek warriors, the human Greek warriors, who are Adonises, like specimens of human masculinity, fighting against the inhuman Persians. This way predates Islam, by the way. So it's just like trying to seed that part of the world, anything that comes from that part of the world is inhuman. It's degraded, it's decadent, it needs to be fought against. Zack Snyder, when he's kind of got, ticket to ride in the film world, what does he want to adapt? 300. So straight away that's his right-wing politics. Then later on we see him direct Watchmen. Rorschach is Alan Moore's caricature. Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen, is always kind of commenting on superheroes and comics whenever he writes. And in this case, the character of Rorschach, who's central to the narrative, is
the narrator.
Is the narrator, and he is a what can you say? He's a character that Alan Moore created as a commentary on another set of characters called respectively Mr. A and The Question.
Yeah.
Both created by Steve Ditko. Am I getting that right?
Ditko did The Question. I don't know about Mr. A.
I think he also did Mr. A.
Steve Ditko was the co-creator of Spider-Man.
Co-creator of Spider-Man. Randian. Mr. A and The Question are both attempts by Steve Ditko to express his Randian philosophy in comics.
Yeah.
So then you got Zack Snyder bringing forth this new, this Watchmen through a lens of Randianism.
Right.
How does he do it? Through the character of Ozymandias is the classic Randian hero. A Randian hero is someone who is ruthless in the attainment of their own goals. Alright, so Watchmen's really interesting because it's Zack Snyder's probably first attempt to carry out a kind of Batman versus Superman plotline, or Randman versus Uberman plotline, because Dr. Manhattan is definitely an Ubermensch, whereas Ozymandias is the Randian superhero. And where Alan Moore had the Randian hero of Ozymandias just outwitting Dr. Manhattan and convincing the world that they were being invaded by squid vaginas, in Zack Snyder's version, he can't resist having the Ozymandias figure actually try to convince the world that they're being invaded by Dr. Manhattan. So he's basically setting up a Randman versus Ubermensch conflict out of Alan Moore's text. And of course, Ozymandias is the perfect Randian hero, a billionaire genius. So that's why Zack Snyder has no hesitation in adapting it that way. So then we get Man of Steel.
Let's just not forget quickly that in between those films he also made Sucker Punch.
Oh yeah, Sucker Punch is whack. Sucker Punch is an opportunity for us to introduce the other strand of Zack Snyder's philosophy. Sucker Punch is awful. It's an abysmal movie. What's going on in Sucker Punch? Well, Zack Snyder's peculiar in the sense that he doesn't come from an evangelical Christian background. He was actually brought up a Christian scientist. The religion of Christ scientist believes is anti-science. It believes that if you want healing from your medical condition, you've fundamentally got a mental problem. That's all you've got. Like if you've got cancer or whatever, you've thought wrong. So the only way to cure your ailment, your physical ailment, is by what they call prayer. It's not actually just praying the Lord's Prayer or anything like that. It's like a mental dialogue between you and your higher self or whatever to realign the mental issues that are causing your physical ailment. That's the only medical treatment permissible.
And you're saying Zack Snyder is one of these?
He was brought up.
He was brought up
in that background. I have no idea what his current beliefs are, but I'm using it to make a good dovetail of what's happened to right-wing American society, that they've incorporated these two philosophies. I think that Sucker Punch fits into that paradigm because it's a critique of medicine.
Yeah. It really, really is. Yeah, massively so.
Right. So who's there? They're put into this mental institute. A Christ scientist wouldn't trust a mental institute. It would be and this is legitimate. They probably are bloody awful places, and especially back in the day, and probably now as well. What am I talking about? They're not defensible. But the point is, or some of them are not defensible. But the point is, that's the story he chooses to tell. Yeah. That you mustn't trust it. You will be abused there. You will be raped there. Let's face it. That's what will happen.
But go into your higher self and create a dream world where you can fight a dragon.
Nice, exactly. So you can get away. That's probably his metaphor of the type of Christ scientist prayer that you need to do. Man of Steel, again, as far as I'm concerned, horrific movie. Visually stunning, as we know Zack Snyder's capable of, but just an absolute shit show. Now we get to the crux of it. He's re-envisioning Superman as a Christ Messiah in a Randian paradigm. Superman is the Messiah. He's Jesus.
He's always been like that, though, like that character. But you're saying that this bent is like more in line with the Randian philosophy, as opposed to
But it's interesting you say he's always been like that, because originally Superman was created by a couple of Jewish lads. Yeah. In New York, they couldn't find work in any other industry because of the anti-Semitism at the time. So they got work in comics. It was lowbrow enough that they were allowed to work, basically. They created Superman as a commentary on the Nietzschean ideal of the Ubermensch. Yeah. The overman or the beyond man, or another translation, Superman, which was starting to be used by German nationalists, not with Nietzsche's Nietzsche was dead by then, but Nietzsche was very against anti-Semitism, and he was against German nationalism. But the German nationalists at the beginning of the 20th century started to use his ideas after his death to shore up their nationalism and their idea of being an Aryan super race. Yeah. These two Jewish guys who, their families had been refugees from European anti-Semitism, arrived in America and knew, I'm sure, that this philosophy was being used. So they did a genius creative move by taking that idea of a Superman and making him fundamentally a Jewish superhero. How kind of paralleled he is to the messianic figure throughout the canon, I'm not sure, but initially he's a Jewish superhero.
The thing is as well, though, I don't know if this sort of feeds into what you're saying, When Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel created Superman, they originally created him as a villain. It was called Reign of the Superman, and he was a bald, very much like Lex Luthor, a bald, super genius with like telekinetic ability, I think it was, and that didn't take off. And then they reinvented him as a sort of like a circus strongman almost. Like he could only leap tall buildings as a single man. He couldn't actually fly.
Yeah.
And he was, not as strong as the world. He was as strong as 10 men and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's sort of
that's definitely
because that obviously feeds into that as well.
And later on, the Lex Luthor character, who's the way he's envisioned later on, is definitely based on the image of that original
Reign of the Superman.
Superman.
Yeah.
And Lex Luthor, the whole character is much more like an Ubermensch than Superman is. Not so coincidentally, the character of Lex Luthor is a Randian hero.
Yeah.
He's self-made. He's a rich guy who's achieving his goals and brooks no opposition. No one can stand in the way of him achieving his goals, especially not Superman. The notion of Superman offends him. The notion of Superman interfering with the achievement of any goals offends him. Man of Steel mainly is setting up, as far as I'm concerned, a messianic, a Christian messianic. He's like taking Superman and removing any of the Judeo part of the Christian myth from it.
Okay.
And placing him firmly in the mold as a Christ figure, a Messiah. This is backed up by the scenes in the church in Man of Steel with the priest and the back and forth. So he doesn't go to a synagogue or anywhere else. He goes to church, Christian church. Superman in this one is he's still the Messiah.
Even more so.
Yeah.
There's that shot where the woman's in a flood and they've written the S on the top of the roof and she's crying, looking up, and the shot dollies in and then pans up to Superman.
Right.
And he's a cape and a reflection with the sun behind him. It's like...
Exactly. Exactly.
You couldn't paint a better picture than that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He's Jesus.
Yeah.
He's a Randian version of Jesus. He's a Randian Jesus version of Super Jesus. Because it's kind of irritating to him to have to do this altruist stuff. Because altruism runs completely contrary to the Randian philosophy. So he's an unwilling Super Jesus. And in fact, the real world media criticism of Man of Steel would have proved this to Zack Snyder, that Rand was right. If you're a great man, the rest of us will tear you down.
Yeah.
We'll tear down the Randian hero. We'll try to tear them down. That's what we see it playing out in the media in the film. So all the backlash against Man of Steel, which was totally justified, would have only strengthened Zack Snyder's Randian resolve to promote the non-altruistic version of Superman, the non-Jewish version of Superman, basically. So this is, as far as I'm concerned, his agenda. Batman's far more of an appropriate Randian superhero. He's a billionaire. He's kind of self-made in the way that right-wing America appreciates that he's from a rich family, and he's come into lots of money, and he's made more money. That's appropriately Randian. That fits in with the right-wing narrative of what a hero is in the US. So that's why, to Zack Snyder's mind, there's no real need to set up the conflict. Of course they're going to fight. Yeah. And of course Batman's going to try.
There's verses in the title.
Yeah.
If they don't fight, it'd be stupid.
Yeah, it's Rand versus Jesus. And that's the conflict that's going on in Zack Snyder's mind. You mentioned before a really interesting point that maybe, well, how did the city get rebuilt so quick? Maybe Superman helped build all the buildings.
You would think.
Great. That's exactly what a Randian superhero would do.
Right.
A Randian Superman wouldn't bother with this freaking rescuing people off rooftops nonsense. He would use his super strength and use his laser vision to build skyscrapers. Skyscrapers are an obsession of Ayn Rand's. She wrote this novel called The Fountainhead, which is a hugely influential book for Randians and America in general, which it all revolves around the builder of a skyscraper. He's an architect. He's brutal. He's totally ruthless in his goal, his desire to build his perfect vision of a building. At the end of Man of Steel, when all those skyscrapers are coming down, on one level, that's like the Randian going, see what an asshole this guy is? He destroyed skyscrapers. You know, that's bad. You know,
Yeah.
that was some man's vision.
Yeah.
But the other thing that
Right, okay, yeah.
they wouldn't care about the people in them.
No.
It's the fact the skyscraper fell down. Someone's vision, damn it.
That's why they didn't talk about how many people died. It's
But
like,
the skyscraper's
but
falling
the
down.
building fell down.
The building fell down.
Did you see the building fall down? It fell down.
Yeah, someone's Randian expression on the earth, their immortal expression to build a skyscraper, fell down, damn it.
Ah!
Yeah, that sucks, but it's okay because another Randian hero can come along and build another bigger
He's
one.
going to build the shit out of it.
Yeah. If you're about to ask, how do I know that Zack Snyder is a Randian?
I was about to. Do you think that he's aware?
Okay, now I want to just give you another piece of evidence.
Okay.
Ayn Rand wrote The Fountainhead,
Mhm.
then sold the screenplay of it. Guess who to?
Warner Brothers?
Exactly.
Shut the front door.
Warner Brothers owns the rights to The Fountainhead. I believe not to Atlas Shrugged. They own the rights to The Fountainhead. Guess which director is planning to adapt The Fountainhead to movie?
Wow. I couldn't imagine who it might be, Hugo.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me?
Zack Snyder has stated that one of his goals to remake The Fountainhead. You don't do that. That's got to be a passion project.
Yeah.
So of course Zack Snyder is a Randian. This is what we've got. This is who we've got at the helm. Where to place the responsibility? I'm pretty sure it's not DC. I'm pretty sure they're unwittingly been drawn into this.
They're participants, yeah.
But Warner Brothers, for sure.
Mm.
Warner Brothers, I'm convinced. The connection goes way back to the 40s, when Ayn Rand managed to sell The Fountainhead, and Warner Brothers produced the movie of The Fountainhead.
Oh, okay. So it's been done before.
It's been done. It's been 1949. I think Gary Cooper was Howard Rourke. In my opinion, it's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers have allowed Zack Snyder to attain this position in their creative project that any Randian would be proud of.
Yeah.
Any Randian. And the fact that there's so much Christian imagery in these movies, the fact that there's so much attempt to recast Superman as this messianic figure, for me speaks to the conflict that's in almost every evangelical Christian right-wing American's mind. Constantly. They're constantly battling between the objectivism, or whether they want to reframe it as materialist selfishness, personal greed, personal ambition, acquisitiveness, and their Christianity, which tells them not to have any of those things, to give up their possessions to the poor, to tolerate everybody. That's the conflict in the heart of the right-wing American psyche, and I'm convinced it's in Zack Snyder's psyche. The Christianity stuff goes a bit deeper than that, because Batman is referred to explicitly in Batman versus Superman as the devil by the hostages.
Yeah, that's right. He is too.
The devil rescued us. So Batman is a Luciferian paradigm in it. That's why he comes into totally logical, in Zack Snyder's mind, totally logical conflict with the Superman.
Yeah.
Because Batman's the devil.
Yeah.
And then, being the devil isn't necessarily a bad thing. We know from, the devil is the adversary. So sophisticated Christians know that the devil is part of God's plan and everything like that. What about the Martha line?
Oh, massive spoilers here.
Yeah.
Hugo's about to basically give away why Superman and Batman stop punching each other in the face. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you might have a better explanation for why they did it.
I don't have a better explanation for the incompetence of that particular crafting, but I do have an explanation for the focus on that name and that figure of Martha Kent. She's the virgin.
No, I should just explain that for those of you who don't know, and this is a spoiler, so if you haven't seen the film, you don't want to know, don't watch this bit, skip ahead a couple of minutes. But in the film, during Batman and Superman's fight, Batman is basically about to spear Superman in the face with a kryptonite spear. Superman pleads with him to save Martha, which is, he's talking about his mum who's been kidnapped by Lex Luthor. He's like,
right.
Save Martha, save Martha. But then you find out it's also Batman's mum's name. And he's like, why did you say that name? And then she's like, it's his mother. And then all of a sudden they stop fighting because their mummies have the same name.
Martha undoubtedly sounds like mother. So mother is the theme there. It's not that their mothers have the same name. That's neat, but it's more that this alien has a mother. I think that's what they're trying to get at.
Right. Okay.
Has a human mother, but the point of that is in terms of a Christian paradigm here, Martha Kent is the Virgin Mary. She didn't give birth to Superman. They find him in a field. And
You're so right. You're
right.
so right.
So she's the Virgin Mother. And that's why he always goes back to her and asks for advice. That's why she's so prevalent. And so that's just an interesting link. Batman doesn't have a mother. He's the devil. He's the orphan character. He's the adversary. But Superman does.
Yeah.
But not his real mother, in the sense that it's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's pretty loose here, but Mary did give birth, but she didn't have sex, kind of thing. So she's a virgin, and Martha, well, presumably she had a bunch of sex with her husband, but they didn't have kids. I'm presuming
She had a bunch.
They're healthy Kansas people.
Yeah, they are. They're
Kevin Costner.
corn-fed.
Kevin Costner.
Costner. He was ploughing that like water world.
But Zack Snyder's The Death of Superman, an epic comic season.
That was massive.
Really, really a stupid one. I don't have any love for it whatsoever.
But it was
anyway,
massive. There was like early 90s. Doomsday came down and killed Superman, and he was dead. He was gone from the comics.
Nevertheless, it's been Snydered now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You'll never see an adaptation of it. So then the tableau that appears at the death of Superman shows Wonder Woman akin to the Mary Magdalene figure, and Batman as a kind of weird adversarial devil, them both cradling the corpse. To the left of the frame, did you notice it? There is a silhouette of a cross on the left side of the screen. And the implication of it is that it is formed out of girders from collapsed buildings.
Right.
Which is one of the iconic images from 9/11.
Yeah.
The post 9/11. There happened to be some girders sticking up that either got chopped in this formation, and it's a Christian cross. It's poking out of the ground. Got photographed a lot. It became one of the iconic images of this terrible disaster.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder fucking Snydered it for his bloody Death of Superman scene to link, subconsciously, Superman not only with the crucifixion, but with bloody 9/11.
Alright, so the final piece of the puzzle for this Martha mother business is basically the idea of conversion, because Superman is the Messiah, Batman's the devil, his adversary, but then even just the mention of Martha mother is able to convert Batman from being an adversary hell-bent on killing Superman, the Messiah, and convert him into a disciple. He becomes his friend at that point, his friend and follower. A little bit of Catholicism sort of thing, the power of this mother archetype, this Martha archetype. And then at the end, of course, you've got this devil, the adversary, and you've got the kind of Mary Magdalene Wonder Woman, and they're kind of pulling the Messiah's corpse down after having been kind of crucified and speared, and they're converted. At the end, they're next to the grave, the real grave. The other one is an empty grave. The one with the government is an empty tomb. They're at the real grave. And then an unspecified number of days later, but I bet it's 3, the hint is strong that, the Messiah is rising again. In fact, actual bits of dust do rise again. Okay, so Zack Snyder's really retconning and trying to backtrack on all the destruction from Man of Steel. It's really telling that in the flashback destruction scene, is very, very careful to show Bruce Wayne's employee praying.
Heavenly God, creator of heaven and earth, have mercy on my soul.
And so basically what he's saying is, see, everyone got out. They evacuated everybody except a few people. And those people had the opportunity to pray, you guys. Make peace. And then, they'll be in heaven. So they're fine. What's wrong with you people? Look at silly Batman. He doesn't know that. What a silly. He's really angry. But doesn't he know those people either got out or they're in heaven? Or they're not in heaven because they didn't pray. And therefore they deserve not to be in heaven. Silly Batman. Silly Batman being against all of that destruction. And silly you critics, silly you general public who rejected my vision and didn't get that, everyone prayed and got into heaven who deserved to get into heaven, and everyone else escaped or got into hell because they deserved it. Silly people. I'm Zack Snyder, genius.
that brings me pretty much, I think, to the end of the Christian part of it. One more part of the Randian philosophy.
Yeah.
Because that's always the conflict that's going on here. We already know that Lex Luthor, throughout the comics canon, represents the kind of perfection of a Randian hero, an Ubermensch. He's always represented that, and he's always the Ubermensch is in conflict with the Superman. It's a very, very interesting kind of literary device. Why, oh why, you might be asking, why on earth is Jesse Eisenberg acting like such a fucking knobend
He
throughout the movie?
It's like he's got schizophrenia or something. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes, it is. He's been instructed to play it like that because...
Well, I suppose in the script, if you read those words, he sounds like a lunatic. Like he sounds completely unhinged in the script. Like where he's up on the podium
Yes,
at the library,
it's so
and
bad.
he can't get his can't understand the right words.
So fucking bad.
Yeah.
So fucking bad. Okay, so what's going on there? Normally, if you're making a Superman movie, Lex Luthor is your Randian hero, and it's a critique on Randianism.
Yeah.
It's a critique on objectivism.
Sure.
Because he's the baddie. Lex Luthor is the baddie in this because it's a Superman movie. But he's not going to be the Randian hero. Either Batman is or Super Jesus is. They're going to be the ones who tease out the philosophy of the futility of doing things for others. Zack Snyder and whoever else is involved with this directorial decision, they know that they're not going to be able to make Lex Luthor the Randian hero.
Okay.
But he would normally be that. He's got the money, he's got the smarts. So what do? They destroy the character. They turn him into a maniac.
Yeah, but by the end of the film, he's behind bars.
Exactly.
You know, going dun 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 dun. That was so irritating. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about.
The red capes are coming.
Yeah.
The red capes are coming. It's just awful writing. It's just, you know, those are good qualities in the Randian philosophy to be selfish, to go after your own goals, to not tolerate anyone standing in your way, which is fundamentally what Lex Luthor is always trying to do. Those are Randian philosophies. That's objectivism. They can't have the baddie have those qualities. So how do they get around it? Just make him a maniac.
Okay, so Snyder's managed to remove Lex Luthor, the perfect Randian hero, from being a Randian hero by making him into just a gibbering psycho. Snyder's not done with Lex yet. He's got to damn him further on the other thread of the philosophy right here. Okay, this is interesting. Which ideological group in America is the most distrusted? Well, a recent survey said it's atheists. Atheists are the number one most distrusted people by the American public. So it's an easy one for Zack Snyder. He's just shooting fish in a barrel here. What he has is Lex just spout this old atheist argument called the problem of evil.
God is all powerful. He cannot be all good. And if he is all good, then he cannot be all powerful.
It's a very old argument. It's pretty solid. And what he's basically doing here is just making Lex Luthor into a cartoon evil atheist. And there's a lot of Christian fundamentalists in the US who'll just recognize it and go, yeah, that's exactly right. Those guys are untrustworthy, they spout gibberish, and this is the crucial part, they're extremely dangerous. So those are the qualities that he gives to Lex Luthor to completely damn him as not only not a Randian hero, but a cartoon evil atheist who doesn't have God or the Messiah in his life, doesn't believe in the Messiah, and therefore will do anything, will be so evil, has no moral compass, will do kidnapping and kill a bunch of people and do all sorts of other evil, because that's what atheists would do. They're a bunch of evil psychopaths.
It's not just the incompetence, it's not just the cack-handed snidering of beloved properties. It's not just the complete inability to direct a human to act like a human. It's a deep, profound schism of two very contrary philosophies that are fighting it out in his quite weak head for supremacy, and he's trying to reconcile them. And fundamentally, this is also what's going on in right-wing discourse in the USA, and that's why those things fill us with such unease, and they should. They should, because neocons, extremely dangerous faction of right-wing American politics, hawkish to an unbelievable degree, will take us to war, will justify it based on these kind of racist analogies that of the Frank Miller variety that we saw in 300, and will justify it thanks to an evangelical Christian bent, as George Bush did in invading Iraq, and any accusations of that they're being selfish or that they're not being altruistic won't just fall on deaf ears, will actually be taken as praise, because that's living up to the Randian ideal. Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. A very, very in-depth look at not only the social standpoint of a film like Batman vs. Superman. I can't do this seriously with a cat on me. It's weird.
Blofeld.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Batman vs. Superman was one of the biggest openings of all time. It was huge. And then the drop-off was catastrophic. It just... People went and saw it once, and that was it. Like that was the end of it. Massive opening weekend, and then just nothing. They have gone back to the drawing board in terms of how they're going to, have the Justice League on screen. It's apparently going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun. Because let's face it, Batman Superman was dark as shit. Irrespective of its political and agendas and its philosophical agendas, it's not a great film. Watch it at your peril. And certainly maybe even watch it now with maybe a little bit more information.
See, what do you reckon? Was that just an hour of utter horse shit that just dribbled out of my mouth?
Was it nonsense?
Or am I onto something?
Yeah.
Because I've thought about this Zack Snyder character a lot. He's puzzled me, but I reckon I've got him nailed now.
We've talked about it for years, and I've Hugo's never gone into depth with it like that. But maybe I'm going to go back and watch the original cut of the film with that in mind. And see what we think. Hit us up on the comments and let us know if you can see some of these parallels, or if you think we're absolutely bananas.
Randy and Space Jesus, is that what we're dealing with here?
That's what we're talking about. Randy and Space Jesus, or just comic book fluff. You be the judge.
What did I tell you? Deep or what? So, what do you think? Do you think he's right? Do you think he's wrong? Do you think we're both lunatics? Or did you not watch to the end? Who knows? But it was great sitting down with Hugo and hearing what he had to say about Hollywood in general, really, and maybe what's going on there, and what we don't know, and what we do know, and what is behind the veil. Very, very interesting conversation. Either that, or Hugo has way too much time in his hands living out there in the sticks. So, thanks anyway, Hugo. I really appreciated it. So that's it for this week. I'll see you again next week with the part 3 of episode 3, which will be my final part of the interview with Hugo, which is a little bit more fun, a little bit more lighthearted. Do come back. We'll see you then.
Every element and specimen, ladies, gentlemen, I am your host, the planet Earth. Welcome in. Congratulations on your development. On this amazing occasion, I present a retrospective from the very beginning, 8 million millennia spin, until the momentous second I let complexity enter in. There it is, one of your earliest forms, a radiolarian. Even so early on, symmetry radiates from within. But you were somewhat scared to swim in the ocean. You were hoping to just float there, hold the motive, remain protozoic. But with momentum unfolding, we kept on composing creation's poem, honing each verse with unique